Hello, this is Ivy with Rainbow Reptiles, and welcome to my podcast. First things first, this podcast, while most of it will probably be reptile themed, as is the case with this episode, that won't always be the case. I'm just gonna kind of talk about whatever I want to talk about. There will always be a snake of the week, so that'll be cool. It'll be kind of a who's that Pokemon type thing where you have a chance to guess what it is. This podcast I recorded with Andrew and Brianna, who run A and B's Living Art Exotics. They're based down in Phoenix, Arizona, and they primarily deal in breeding ball pythons, although they own many more reptiles. So here's that interview and enjoy. Hello, welcome. I have to be honest, you're the first person that I've talked to for this podcast, so we'll see how this goes. I'm sorry if I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited.
No. That's fine. We're nervous too, so we can all be nervous together.
Now, I know I met you on TikTok, as I funnily meet a lot of reptile people. And I know your account is at ABS Living Art Exotics, which is your business name. Do you have any other, do you have a website or anything else that people can find you at?
Yeah, we just made a website. It's through another website that helps you make websites.
Mm-hmm. That's how my website is, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's through Wix.com, but we also have a link tree, and it's in our link tree. And our link tree is on our Instagram, where you'll also find our Morph Market, our Facebook page, and our Teespring page, which is where you can buy shirts and merch and stuff as well.
Awesome. I will get those links from you and put them in the description so people can find those. How did you get started on TikTok?
Well, I was kind of reluctant to get a TikTok just because I'm not very creative, so it was hard for me to come up with ideas and everything. But Andrew's sister actually has TikToks, and she was bugging us for the longest time, saying, "You guys need to make a TikTok. You need to make a TikTok." So I finally did, and that's kind of how the TikTok started.
That's awesome. I really enjoy your TikToks. They're very niche, but awesome. How did you guys get into reptiles? Did you guys get into reptiles together? Was it one of you guys kind of dragged the other one in? How did that happen?
I'll kind of start with my story first, and then I'll let Andrew tell his story. His is a lot more interesting than mine. Yeah. So, I have always I grew up with frogs and little anoles and lizards and stuff, but nothing really big or anything. Until when I went to college, I actually worked at PetSmart, and so I really got into different animals there, and I began the pet care department. So I started working in the pet care department, and I really just favored the reptiles as opposed to the birds or the small animals. And of course I still love all animals, but I was really fascinated with the snakes in particular. And so that's kind of where my love grew. And then I started getting I got one ball python, and I had her throughout my college life, and unfortunately she ended up getting sick, and I took her to the vet, and she passed away just before I met Andrew. But when me and Andrew met, we went to a reptile show in 2018. Yeah, 2018, and we bought a snake there, and that's kind of where we started having the passion together. And so a few months down the line, we kind of just we were watching videos on breeding ball pythons and everything, and we were just kind of wow, these are really pretty. It's pretty much, in our eyes, it's like live art. So that's why we decided we actually wanted to invest in this and start our journey. in the reptile world.
That's very cool. I something that I've always noticed about your business name is that it's Living Art Exotics. And I definitely like some of the ball pythons I see that you post are just art, and that truly is how to describe them. Anyways, yeah, I'd love to hear Andrew's story of how he got into reptiles.
So I've always loved reptiles since I was young. I've been catching lizards since I was like 10. And then my first encounter with the snake, I didn't really like snakes. I was afraid of them. And my first encounter with the snake is my stepsister. She told me there's a snake, and I looked and I just grabbed it. I don't even know why. I just caught it and it bit my hand, and I walked
As they
home.
do.
Yeah. I walked home and showed my dad. Ever since then, I love snakes. And then first time I got a ball python or a snake was the reptile expo that we went to.
Mm-hmm. That is very cool. I know a lot of people who caught snakes when they were kids, and lizards and frogs and all that stuff. I think that's really how everyone gets into it at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
How many reptiles? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Andrew almost killed us the other day because he was chasing a toad. So we were like driving into our neighborhood, and it's kind of like a curved road, so people drive down it fast and can't really see other cars.
Mm-hmm.
So Andrew was out of nowhere, just like, stop the car, there's a toad, I need to get out. So I just stopped the car, and he ran out, and this car comes like cruising behind me and almost hit our it almost hit our car because it was in the middle of the street. And Andrew was just like la-di-da over there trying to catch the toad, and I was like, Andrew, get back in the car, like this car's gonna hit us. And then he's like, no, it's not. And then it was literally so close to hitting us.
Oh
I was
gosh.
so mad at him. He didn't even get the toad or a picture or anything.
Oh, so all that work for nothing.
No.
He jumped in the bushes last second.
Oh, that's the worst. Oh, I feel that happens. It's not, yeah. Anyways, that happens to me too often. How many reptiles do you guys currently have? Do you have a number or a guess?
Yeah, so I think we just counted, and we have 40 ball pythons.
Oh, wow.
It's 35 or 40. The babies kind of come and go as we produce them, so that's why it kind of fluctuates. And we have one hognose, one reticulated python, one carpet python, one leopard gecko, and then about 5 crested geckos. But we just had one of our crested geckos just gave us 2 eggs, and they just hatched. So we also have 2 baby crested geckos.
Oh, that's awesome. Are you hoping to get into crested gecko breeding in addition to ball pythons, or is that more of just kind of a side fun project?
Yeah, so everything we got, we kind of want to be able to expand from just ball pythons to more, so we can be in more markets as well. So eventually we would like to, breed hog noses and crested geckos and leopard geckos and retics and carpet pythons, which carpet pythons and retics are a lot different than ball pythons. Ball pythons are really chill, but our retic and our carpet, they definitely have some.
They're like hungry 24/7.
Yeah, and they got some attitude to them. We call them salty all the time. But yeah, so it's been an adventure for us, and we wanted to get into crested geckos and leopard geckos because a lot of the time that's how I feel like little kids kind of find their passion is through crested geckos and leopard geckos.
Yeah.
So we can expand our market that way as well.
Give them options.
Yeah, give them options.
Yeah. No, I even though I don't have a full business yet, I'm hoping to do pretty similar things. That's very cool. And I totally agree that a lot of times kids will see a leopard gecko in the store and they'll get it, and then just the reptile hobby consumes them from then on out.
Yeah.
It's a great way to get into it. Is there a question that you guys often get when people find out that you keep snakes?
Yeah, often I wouldn't say really a question, but we also have like dogs and cats too. So a lot of the time people are like, "Oh, they don't try to like eat your cats." And we're like, "No, like the cats are more of a danger to our ball pythons than anything, like our ball pythons will just hide if they're scared, but
Yeah.
the cat's nails can really get them bad, So I feel like that's the biggest or concern or question that we get is if we're putting our cats or dogs in danger, which we're definitely not. So
Yeah, I also keep some dogs and a cat, and I, funnily enough, have pretty similar experiences. And the thing I often say is we don't let them interact because we don't want to chance, anything happening. And if anything did happen, it would be the cats or the dogs doing it to the reptiles. The reptile
yeah,
wouldn't be able to do much to them.
exactly.
Aside from maybe like an alligator, but that's, neither of us keep alligators, so I think we're good there. What's something that caught you off guard when you started posting videos? Was there a common reaction or questions that you got that just surprised you?
I feel like when we started posting videos, there is a side of TikTok that just like really hates reptiles. And they don't have like a very open mind, and they're not willing to, be educated so that they can kind of just learn about the reptile and how the reptiles work. So they don't necessarily have to be so afraid of reptiles. Like even in my like I guess real life at work, I had someone tell me like the only good snake is a dead snake. And like they said it and they laughed afterwards. So like they thought they were being funny, but I don't think they understand that that really does hurt me because like reptiles are a part of who I am and who Andrew is. And we really do love these reptiles. Like they're not just there for us to breed or anything, but they're there because we love them and we are very passionate about them. So
Yeah. Anyone who, well, I maybe shouldn't say anyone, but most people I feel who gets into breeding does it because they love the animals. And it's I've heard the same comment even on my TikToks, and it always kind of takes me by surprise because I've surrounded myself with people who are maybe not always a fan of snakes or are afraid of snakes, but have never said once, "Oh, I want that snake to be dead," and so it's very startling when someone does say that. Is there a common misconception that you come across when you tell people that you keep snakes or on TikTok or wherever?
I feel like one thing that we always hear is your snake is like sizing you up to eat you, or that that they're I feel like a lot of people think that snakes in particular are malicious when really they're just scared all the time. Like they look at us and they see something really big, really tall, and they think we're a predator. So they're just scared, and it's all about working with them and getting them to trust you and be able to, just be okay with being handled. And out of all the years we kept snakes, out of all the snakes we've had, I think Andrew's been bitten twice and I've only been bitten once, and it barely even leaves a mark. And I think the biggest misconception is that if you get bit by a snake, you're gonna go to the hospital or have like really severe damage. So especially with ball pythons, because I know with the bigger snakes like a retic or like a full grown boa or something, you might have a little bit of damage, but it's still not going to be anything, life threatening.
Yeah, it's funny how often people think that snakes are going to do more damage to you when in fact humans could do far more damage to them easily.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when you're talking about something like a ball python that does get pretty big, but where they're so timid and their teeth are not big, nor do they do a lot of damage. And, yeah. You mentioned earlier that you have a real life. is ABS Living Art Exotics. Wow, I can talk. What you do for a living, or do you have secondary jobs?
We also have other jobs. I have my bachelor's in social work, so I do a lot of working with families and kids in general. And now I actually am working kind of in the healthcare version of that. So yeah, I have my bachelor's in social work, and I kind of got that before I really found my passion for reptiles. And then Andrew, what do you do for work?
I work at a call center for like asthma inhalers, or like a savings on asthma inhalers.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah. So we do have the luxury of working from home at our jobs though. So we are still home with our reptiles most of the time.
That's good. Was that the case before the pandemic, or was it the pandemic kind of switched it to be at home?
The pandemic definitely did switch it, because before the pandemic, he still worked at the same place, but it was in office.
Mm-hmm.
And I, before the pandemic, my job was in home. So I was visiting these families in home. And then with the pandemic, it switched to Zoom meetings. And during the pandemic, we actually bought a house, so we moved. And once it switched back to in home, that's when I kind of had to find a different job, because all of my clients were an hour and a half away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I ended up having to switch jobs to the healthcare version, just so that I wasn't driving all of the time.
Yeah, I know that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, and a lot of the time I would drive that far, and then, sometimes they wouldn't answer the door. So it kind of just felt like a lot for no results.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think that Zoom is a pretty good way of doing things, and it's kind of sad that it took a global pandemic to get it up and running, but
yeah, definitely. And all of my clients, I feel like the reason why they shifted to kind of not answer the door is because they got so used to Zoom, and they actually enjoyed Zoom a lot more and were more open on Zoom than they were with some stranger just coming into their house, So
yeah,
I understand them completely.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And it's nice that you're able to stay at home and take care of all the animals and all of that. Is there anything that the pandemic made you adjust to in terms of your reptile keeping and your day-to-day life, aside from Zoom, obviously?
Yeah, I don't really think there was a big shift in the way we did things. Our reptile shops, they stayed open. I think the only thing that changed was we did get, I think 2 reptile expos were canceled. But we're not at the point where we can sell at reptile expos yet anyway. So that didn't change for us, but it did affect a lot of people in our area. And I do think that we found ways to order a lot more stuff online, though, and have them shipped to us. And this wasn't really necessarily due to the pandemic, but we did start breeding our own rat supply for our animals as well.
Well, when you have 40-something snakes, it makes sense to start breeding your own rats.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm sure the pandemic, being stuck at home, it was a good time to get stuff up and running for rat breeding, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
How would your friends describe what you do?
Our friends are mostly just family members and other people in the reptile community. So, there's people at the reptile stores here like, oh, wow, like you guys have grown so much. I can't believe you're still breeding ball pythons, breeding reptiles. That's really cool. And then our families, his dad in particular is really into ball pythons now. Like him and his dad can talk about it for hours. And with my dad, he's like kind of like he'll admire the snakes from afar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can be like, oh, Dad, we just had these babies. Do you want to see? And he'll be like, yeah, sure. But he won't want to, like, hold them or anything, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just for snakes. That's with, like, even cats.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big dog person. So reptiles are a big change for him. And then when we actually started to breed and keep reptiles, we lived with my mom, and she was really supportive. She really liked the idea, and she likes snakes. She's not afraid of them or anything, and she's the one in my childhood who would keep like the frogs and the reptiles and stuff like that. So there's that as well. And then, do you want to talk about Gia?
Yeah, I actually got my mom into snakes too, and she now has a leopard gecko of her own.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and my sister, she's very supportive of the. I have three sisters. Two of them, one of them doesn't really care for snakes. The other two love the snakes. They think it's awesome. My little sister wants to eventually breed it on her own too. And I'm like, well, I'll be here to help.
Speaking of specifically ball pythons, do you guys have a favorite morph? Are you currently working with that morph, or is it something you're hoping to work with in the future?
Well, I'll have Andrew answer first because he has a favorite for sure.
My favorite is definitely Desert Ghost.
Mm.
I love how it brightens up the colors and really makes the blacks very black and just cleans it up in general. I also love Clown, and we do have a Clown boy
Mm-hmm.
right now. So I'm glad that I got one of them in our collection. We don't have the Desert Ghost yet, but I think that will be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Desert Ghost is just a little bit out of our price range right now, so we'll work on it eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite morph, but I have like a favorite look. And I like the snakes that have a lot of contrast in them. Kind of like Andrew was saying, like a lot of brights, but also darks at the same time. And I really like the GHI gene because there's a lot to do with it. You can make it really dark, but then you can also put it in bright things, and the contrast looks really cool. And eventually, I would like to get into Exanthic or like puzzle or even tri-stripe. And going along with what Andrew said, like my dream snake would be a tri-stripe desert ghost. So yeah.
Very cool. Can you explain the GHI gene to me? I'm not aware of that one.
Yeah, so I think it actually stands for gotta have it, which is really funny. But it is pretty dark and it kind of messes with the pattern a little bit. So it kind of stretches the you would call them alien heads. It stretches them out and kind of gets rid of the like the eyes in the middle of the alien heads. And like I said, really dark. Like we have a GHI, we actually have a few GHIs. We have a GHI Mojave ghost, and it's like all gray. With so when you put GHI with ghost, it makes it gray. And then we have a GHI Inchy, and so it kind of made it all black with some bright yellow patterning. So
cool.
it honestly depends on what you put it with, but it all stays pretty dark. And yeah.
That's very cool. I'm not a ball python person. We do own a ball python. She's and she has some other stuff. I'm not quite sure. She's my partner, so I don't know all the genes that's in her. But it's very cool learning about all of the genetics for ball pythons. And learning about these little hidden gems that I didn't even know existed. So let's move on from talking about your favorite morph. Do you guys have a favorite animal, like reptile, or I'll let you do mammals or birds if you want to?
Andrew has a favorite venomous snake.
Unfortunately, their audio cut out at this point. But she goes on to say that while they will probably never own a venomous snake, Andrew's favorite snake would have to be a gaboon viper.
That is Andrew's favorite venomous snake.
Gaboons are so cool. So
Yeah,
yeah.
they're super cool. And then as for just a favorite in general,
It's not ball pythons.
I don't know. It's hard because I feel like it is ball pythons just because there are so many morphs and out there that you can work with, and you can have snakes with like 7 different genes in them, and they just look so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And their temperament, in my opinion, ball python temperaments are kind of the easiest to work with in the snake world. And then if I had to pick something I didn't have, I would say a white-lipped python, just because they're very beautiful, and I love how they're all black and have that iridescence to them. And what about you, babe?
The gaboon viper and
Sorry if you can hear my dogs playing in the background. Someone has the zoomies.
I would say reticulated pythons. I like
Retics are good.
Yeah. And they also have like pretty good variations, just like ball pythons. I don't think as much though. I think ball pythons have every reptile out there beat.
Yeah. When I go on Morph Market, ball pythons are overwhelming with the number of genes they have listed. And they're coming out with more every day because of how popular they are.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Very, very cool. Let me go ahead and take a break and see if I can get my dog to calm down for just a second, and then I'll come right back.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's take this opportunity to do the snake of the week. Since this is the first time doing it, I won't make it too hard for our listeners. This snake is from West Africa. They live in lowland rainforests. They get to be 3¼ to 5 feet long. That's 1 to 1.5 meters in total length. They are egg laying. They usually lay a clutch of 3 to 6 eggs. They're nocturnal. The species has dark brown and tan markings. It is the most popular pet snake in America. The scientific name is Python regius. They are known by several common names. They are known as the royal or ball python. The royal python common name comes from African royalty wearing them as jewelry, often around their necks or their heads. Them being such a docile species of snake, they often cooperated. Their name ball python comes from their defense mechanism, where when they feel they are under attack, they will curl into a ball to hide their head and vital organs. If you'd like to know where I'm getting all this information for the species of the week, feel free to check the description down below, and let's get back to the podcast.
Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully I fixed the problem.
You're good, no worries.
Alrighty. Do you guys have any fun reptile fun facts that you whip out at parties or over Zoom calls?
I would say that most people don't realize how long that reptiles can live. So we always talk about that. And then we talk about how most people don't know that ball pythons lay eggs until we tell them. So
Really?
that's always like a starting topic because they're like, oh, what? They lay eggs? I didn't know that. And then we talk about how you got to incubate them and everything for the best survival rate.
What's your favorite process, or I guess what's your favorite part in the breeding process?
Oh my gosh. I would say it's kind of like a tie between opening their enclosures and seeing eggs and when you get your first pip from the eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Both like very exciting, and it feels like Christmas morning to us. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is so fun. We can't even like describe the feeling we get. It just makes our hearts so happy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I totally agree. What's the best part about keeping reptiles in general? Is it breeding them or is there something else?
I don't think it's breeding them.
I would say the uniqueness. Like, not everyone on our block, I'm sure, doesn't have any reptiles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, keeping reptiles is like kind of making us unique.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also say, um, if we just kept them to breed, we probably wouldn't have reptiles because it's a long process and
Mm-hmm.
you have to have patience. Like, it takes about a year from the time you start pairing the snakes, making sure they're a good weight before you start pairing them. And then you start seeing signs maybe like 3 or 4 months in. And then from there, it still takes, they'll have their ovulation. And then about maybe 16 to 21 days later, um, they might have their prelay shed, and then you gotta wait 30 days from the prelay shed for them to
Oh,
actually,
wow.
from them to actually lay their eggs, and then you have to wait 2 more months for the eggs to hatch. So it is a
Mm-hmm.
long process. So I would say that my favorite part about keeping reptiles is just being able to look at them every day and just
Mm-hmm.
look at their different traits and how each morph works with another morph and how they change each other and how they mix together and just how like beautiful and different each snake is. Like we have two different pastel females, but they both look so different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's cool to be able to look at them every day and see how unique each of them really are.
Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting because every baby is unique in its pattern, in its coloring, in its
Mm,
personality, temperament, everything, you know. And that's such a fun uh aspect of reptile keeping that I don't think people think of often.
right.
Um, oh shoot, what was my question? Uh what so I primarily uh keep colubrids, so corn snakes, milk snakes, king snakes, all that stuff. And specifically for the North American species, they have to go under brumation to then breed the next spring. I know that ball pythons are not, are they tropical by definition, but they don't go into brumation. Is there something that has to happen for them to breed the following season?
So yeah, they don't do brumation or anything, but they have to start building follicles, and each female kind of decides when they want to do that.
Mm.
Um, and basically the things that have to be happening for them to want to even build those follicles is your husbandry has to be good,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of know when they're ready. So, statistics say if your female's a certain weight, then she can lay eggs, yes, but each female is different and they kind of decide for themselves when they're actually ready to build follicles and even lock with a male. So um, I would say most of the time, if your female doesn't um, lay eggs, then you should check your husbandry first. And if that's not happening, you just might have to, wait out a little longer until she feels like she's ready. And
Mm-hmm.
also, something really cool about ball pythons is if they do start building follicles, they do start like building eggs, they can reabsorb those if they feel like the environment is unsafe or that the conditions in their environment aren't up to par. So I think that's really cool too.
That is really interesting. I didn't know that ball pythons did that. What age do they generally lay eggs for the first time, assuming everything is perfect?
Yeah, so if they, are gaining weight at the right, I wouldn't say the right, but at a good pace and everything, usually it takes them about 2.5 years to be ready to breed. And so we have a really good example. Our girl Sukanai, she's a pastel lesser Hetfer clown, and we got her about 2 years ago now, and she is at the size of being ready to breed, but she isn't I would say, in our opinion, she's still a little small, because we also have some girls who are like 3,000 grams, and she's about, I would say, 1,400. So we kind of let her choose. So we put a male in there. She didn't walk, so we're gonna give her another 6 months to a year to try again.
So it's kind of try, give it some time, try again, all that stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
Have you guys encountered a lot of picky babies? I know that there's a common, and I don't know if it's a misconception or just part of ball pythons, that they can be really picky eaters when they're born. And I know that's because of the African soft furs that they eat in the wild. Is that true? Does that happen? Is there a remedy that you guys use to train them or get them to eat regular mice?
So in our experience, it's like half and half. So I would say, which is kind of funny, that usually if the parents are really good eaters, then the babies end up being really good eaters. Or if the baby is like particularly spicy, they end up being really good eaters. But with like the half that decide they don't want to eat, their first go around, we give them a really dark, quiet place to do that. And usually they'll take it. And then the next step is, if they don't take it in a really dark area that's very quiet, then we'll try. Yeah, we'll switch the food. So right now what we breed is rats. So that's always the thing that we try first, is a little fuzzy rat. If they don't take that, then we'll try to go to a fuzzy or hopper mouse. And if they don't take that, then we also have a friend who breeds African soft furs over at Mad Max, which is in Phoenix, just like us. So we always try to do African soft furs as a last resort, but we found a lot of the time after they've had one African soft fur, they pretty much will take anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Our ball python was one of the picky eaters, unfortunately. But she's finally gotten to a point where she's been eating every meal and she's been bulking up, which is good. Going back to your business, where do you hope to take it in the future? I know you mentioned expos. Are you hoping to do expos in the future? Do you want to own a facility at some point, or keep it kind of a home thing?
I think that our next goal would be being able to have enough clutches to where we can be at an expo. And then after that, we would really like to have some sort of facility, whether the facility is something that is at our house. Because right now we have a reptile room, but I wouldn't consider it a facility. I guess we could build something in our backyard that's all for snakes. And then, people can just buy stuff there, or even having our own reptile shop would be the ultimate goal, and just being able to work with reptiles all the time, because that's what we really love.
Would that be a one-stop reptile shop? Like you'd sell lighting and hides and tubs and everything?
Yeah, that would be the ultimate goal for
Very
sure.
cool. That is very cool. Would you hope to open that up in Arizona sometime?
No, we actually have plans to move probably somewhere up north of us, from us, sorry. We don't really want to stay in Arizona just because there are a lot of reptile shops here. It would be a lot of competition and it would just be a lot harder because of that. But we have a few places in mind that we would want to move to that the competition isn't as bad, but that there are still people who love reptiles.
Yeah. Who would still be interested in them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very cool. I think you guys can do it. I do. Your business seems very cool from what I've seen on TikTok, and you guys seem like pretty awesome people.
Thank you.
Yeah. What's one thing about keeping reptiles that you guys didn't expect, or starting your own business that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I would say the picky eaters, like you, we read about it, but we were kind of like, oh, we have some tricks up our sleeves. Like if that happens, we'll figure it out. But our first clutch was a very picky eater clutch. So it was kind of just doing trial and error and figuring out what worked the best, and it was kind of like putting our knowledge to the test kind of thing, because we knew of all these tricks and everything. We would always tell other people these tricks, but we had never been able to try it ourselves. So we were able to try it ourselves and kind of see what worked best that way. And then I would also say one thing that I didn't expect is to have people who, kind of like what I said earlier, there are some people that just really hate reptiles and there's like no changing their mind about it. And that kind of it does suck because you really want to be like, oh, I completely understand being afraid of them, but just like hating them kind of for no real reason is what gets me the most.
Yeah. It seems to be a lack of knowledge when people hate them so much that they say things like the only good snake is a dead snake, because most often with not, and which is the case for even me, I feel, is the more you learn about snakes and reptiles, the more you realize just how amazing creatures they are. And then you would never want to say something as horrible as that.
Yeah. And even if I hated something, I would never say that. So that is what kind of makes me feel like the hate that some people have for reptiles is on a different level type of thing.
Which is so sad because they're beautiful and amazing, and people get into them because they are that. Going back to the picky eaters, is there a thing that you read online or someone recommended to you that just doesn't work and you wouldn't recommend to someone? Or is there something kind of like feeding them an African soft for once that you would recommend?
I wouldn't say there's anything that I would not recommend that I have read.
It is at this point that their audio unfortunately cut out, but they essentially went into detail as how patience is really key with a picky eater, as well as ensuring that your husbandry is really good. You have to check the humidity, you have to make sure that they are stress-free, lots of coverage and foliage and hides. And here's them explaining the rest of what to do when you have a picky eater.
That the temps are good and that they are in a quiet, dark area where they feel safe. So I think that's always the first thing I go to when someone comes to me and is like, hey, like my snake isn't eating, I need help. So the first thing I ask is if it's a ball python or if it's the other snake, because we do have some knowledge on other types of snakes, but ball pythons are where most of our knowledge is. So, and then after I find out if it's a ball python, I immediately go to Husbandry, and like if it's in a tank, blocking out the sides of the tank so that it is darker. If you're using a light, maybe like transitioning to a ceramic heat emitter so that the light's not, in their face when they're trying to eat and stuff like that first. So yeah.
I mean, something to keep in mind with ball pythons is that they are nocturnal. My ball python will not eat if we have the light on, but as soon as we turn it off, she'll strike and go at it.
Yeah.
So we've learned to feed her at night because, but yeah, that's awesome. What's the most important lesson you've learned over your time as a reptile keeper?
I think that the most important lesson that I've learned is that any animal, any snake in particular, with the right amount of handling and working with them will get easier to hold and handle, because we've had our little guy, his name is Nova. He's a inchy fire orange dream ball python, and he was the angriest boy when we got him, and he was angry for a really long time, but Andrew worked with him, and we've had him for a really long time now, and now we're able to actually pick him up out of his enclosure, and we're not in fear of him striking at us or anything. And I think going along with that is you can't be afraid. Even if you know that your snake is angry and, might strike at you, you can't be afraid, because they can sense that too, and it stresses them out. So it'll probably just make the situation worse.
Yeah. Confidence is key when handling a sassy one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Is there any one piece of advice you'd give to someone starting to work with ball pythons?
I would say, like, as a business standpoint, or just like an owner?
Either way. I was thinking of in an owner perspective, but if you wanted to go the business route, that's fine.
Okay, I think it's kind of similar for both, actually, because for any keeper, I would recommend getting everything that you need for your ball python first, which I know is hard because you see a ball python and you're like, oh, I really want that one. But I would still get everything you need for your ball python first. Make sure that whatever you have it in, whether it is a tank or a tub, make sure that all the temperatures are good and steady, they don't fluctuate, and same thing with humidity before you get your animal, because if your husbandry isn't good, then you will run into problems like the snake not eating, or even husbandry issues can also be a reason why your snake might be what, Andrew? The girl? Oh, okay, I have to tell you about something after this, I guess.
Okay.
Because it kind of goes in hand with that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I would make sure, and going along with that, making sure that they have enough places where they can hide in their enclosure, and enough places where they feel safe in their enclosure. And what Andrew was telling me to say was, we got this super pastel leopard fire girl, and after we got her, we tried feeding her. Like a week later, we gave her time to settle and everything, and she didn't eat for us. So we ended up brainstorming like what could be the issue, and we added another hide to her enclosure, and spontaneously the next time we put a snake in there, or not a snake, and next time we put a rat in there, she ate it. So she just wasn't feeling secure enough in her enclosure. So I think that's a big thing, is do your research as well, so that if something bad does go wrong, you already have an idea of what to do, and making sure you have all of the equipment that you need before you get your reptile.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes along with the business standpoint too, because you want to make sure that you have all of your equipment and have extra space, extra room in case, that ball python comes around that you really want for your breeding projects, and you don't have space for it. So you're like, oh, now I got to buy a whole nother rack
Mm-hmm.
and the snake. But if you already had equipment beforehand, you wouldn't have to worry about that. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good advice. Do you guys have any recommendations, like a book, a movie? It doesn't have to be ball python related or even reptile related at that. It could be a TV show, poem, song, whatever.
I would say we have some recommendations for like people who watch YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the time that's where we learn our knowledge, just because Google is so back and forth, and a lot of the books out there and stuff are kind of a little bit outdated. So we really love learning from Nerd, which is the New England reptile distributor, and he's on YouTube. He's a great keeper and really cares about his animals. Who else, babe? Yeah, mutation creation is good too, but I
think morph side of
yeah,
things.
his is good to learn about morphs and genes, I would say is his thing to learn from him. And then for more people who are not just into ball pythons, I would say we recently started to watch, I think it's DBCB Exotics on YouTube, and he has some really good information on things like tokays or crested geckos, a lot of other animals as well. I think he even has a tegu. So he has a lot more variety of animals, and he has a lot more knowledge on other things as well, not just ball pythons.
Awesome. I'm going to have to go look those up now. Very cool. Thank you guys so much for joining. That's pretty much all the questions that I had. It's been such a pleasure talking to you guys and getting your perspective on not only ball pythons, but so many other things. Is there anything you guys would like to say before we end the podcast?
Well, just thank you for thinking about us and asking us to be in here. It's something new for us, so it was a cool experience. And
yeah,
thank you.
Of course, thank you guys. It's been so fun, and to have you guys as my first guest, it's amazing. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, of course.
Once again, a big thank you to A and B's Living Art Exotics for joining us for this episode. What a great start to my podcast series. Make sure you check out their link in the description below. If you guys want more of these podcasts, feel free to leave a comment and tell me who I should interview or topics that you want me to discuss. I'm hoping to post one of these every month or so, although the schedule, I will admit, is not set in stone at the moment. And a big thank you to the listeners. Thank you so much for joining us in the first episode, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. See you next time. That works, right? Yeah, sure.